The pictures you're viewing aren't from a war-torn nation, a dangerously impoverished city in Latin America, or a horror film. These photos depict San Francisco, one of the wealthiest and most significant cities on Earth.
What the
San Francisco's streets are rife with crime, drug trafficking, rough and ready individuals, and people that resemble walking zombies. The origins of capitalism were once in San Francisco. Known as the Paris of America, this city gave rise to the internet in Silicon Valley, computing with Apple and Hewlett-Packard, social networks with Facebook, the most significant search engine in the world, Google, and the most significant electric vehicle manufacturer in the world, Tesla. This metropolis produced unmatched wealth and its citizens had an amazing standard of living. However, during the past 10 years, San Francisco has transformed from a utopia to an absolute nightmare. A city with open-air crime, extreme poverty, and a panorama that resembles an apocalypse on Earth. It is a phenomenon, though. San Francisco is still among the world's priciest cities. Absolutely everything is more expensive in San Francisco, from gasoline, to food, to housing. In San Francisco, houses don't go for $100,000, $200,000. Only millionaires can afford San Francisco's average home, which is valued at more than $1.2 million. And if you purchase a property in this city, you will be surrounded by dozens of impoverished, homeless people who live in tents. You will see the worst aspects of human nature and the most heinous barbarities as a neighbor. These same individuals are also making the city feel more insecure than before. Every day there are robberies in luxury stores, supermarkets, and shopping malls, so much so that the police are unable to do anything. However, San Francisco is not the only city that experiences this issue. Los Angeles, another Californian metropolis that was formerly regarded as the most beautiful city on the American continent, is now dealing with this massive disease. The cradle of entertainment with Hollywood has now become the cradle of violence, consumption of illicit substances, and extreme poverty. The most odd thing about all of this is that Los Angeles is one of the most expensive cities in the world, much like San Francisco. A city where you can see the mansions of the wealthy and well-known, yet only a few blocks away from your home is something out of an apocalyptic film. And President Xi Jinping's visit to San Francisco was the only thing that forced the administration to take action in the face of such terrible scenes. The streets were cleansed in preparation for the visit of China's top leader. However, the crime and homelessness resurfaced as soon as he went. But how could Los Angeles and San Francisco have descended into such hell? This film will examine how California transformed from the birthplace of capitalism and the driving force behind American prosperity to the bankrupt state that it is now, rife with crime, poverty, and suffering. With a population of around 40 million and an economy larger than that of all of Mexico, California is one of the biggest and most significant states in the Union. In actuality, California's economy would rank fifth in the world if it were its own nation. However, California comes from extremely lowly beginnings in history. The terrain was barren and home to few people when the Spanish came in the 1500s. When California was a part of the Spanish Empire and the newly formed nation of Mexico in the 1800s, it was not very important. The United States seized territory from northern Mexico in the middle of the 1800s, establishing California as the new state and expanding its borders to the Pacific Ocean. Terribly beautiful, but barren and challenging to navigate. This was true, at least, prior to the arrival of the gold rush. San Francisco and Los Angeles started to expand because of the abundance of gold found in California's rivers. When a variety of additional natural resources were discovered in California in the early 1900s, the state started to expand gradually. However, California's major population and economic growth came after World War II. After the Second World War, thousands of troops came back to start families and find jobs. The concept of the American dream originated here. The idea of acquiring a house, a car, and having a family thanks to the economic boom that the United States was seeing. The most promising state in the Union is now California. Important military bases were established here, the entire Hollywood entertainment industry was developed, and California had become the engine of the United States. Here the most important technologies in the world were invented, the computer industry was developed in Silicon Valley, and we saw an economic boom with the internet. Many of the largest corporations in history, including Apple, Google, Tesla, Hewlett-Packard, Facebook, McDonald's, Disney, and many more, were formed at this location. During the Cold War, California served as a haven of opportunity and proof that capitalism could produce levels of prosperity never before seen in human history. This is the place where more millionaires and billionaires were created globally. California transformed from a barren state to the global economic engine in less than a century. California's economy would rank fifth in the world if it were an independent nation due to its current size. However, California's drop has been significantly faster because of how quickly the state grew. In California today, everything is more costly. Yes, San Francisco and Los Angeles are two of the most expensive cities in the world. Starting with the engine of any economy, gasoline in California costs $4.60 a gallon, while in the US as a whole it costs $3, 50% more expensive. But it turns out that everything is more expensive in California with no exceptions. What's more, the cost of living is 42% higher in California than the US average, and here you'll see how different categories compare from utilities, food, transportation, and the most exaggerated of all, housing. Housing is ridiculously expensive in California, costing twice as much as in any other state. An average rent in San Francisco for a one-bedroom apartment is $3,300, and in Los Angeles it is $2,700, while the average rent in the United States is $1,700. And only millionaires are allowed to purchase real estate in California. That's right, an average home in San Francisco is worth more than $1.2 million, while in Los Angeles it's worth almost $1 million. And herein lies the paradox. This state may have the most expensive real estate in the Union, but it also has the worst rate of homelessness of any state. Indeed, one of the main causes of California's high homelessness rate is the state's exorbitant housing costs. Regretfully, there are regular folks who don't make enough money to be able to rent a home in addition to the homeless. Believe it or not, there are many Uber drivers, school teachers, and immigrants who sleep in their cars in order to save money. And now for the crucial query. How come houses are so pricey in a state with so much space? Despite being one of the biggest states in the Union, California has the worst housing scarcity in the nation. That's correct, the top public policymaker in California estimates that 3.5 million homes are needed to accommodate the state's present population, despite the fact that there is a plethora of space and resources in the state. If you are enjoying this video and want to be aware of new videos, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. And because supply and demand govern both rent and home prices, California's housing crisis is to blame for the state's price explosion, particularly in San Francisco and Los Angeles. The demand for homes would surely soar if a city's economy is seeing constant growth as a result of all the companies producing well-paying jobs. However, the price people are ready to pay will likewise soar if there is a shortage of such dwellings. Therefore, in affluent states like California, a housing shortage simply serves to drive up prices. But California rules are the main cause of the housing scarcity. Yes, there are regulations in California that restrict building in major cities. In California, every parcel of land has a specific function. While some are for business use, some are for domestic use. The zoning laws are the name of these laws. You may view the famous single-family homes in San Francisco and Los Angeles here. It turns out that single-family homes, or houses, are permitted on more than 80% of the land in all of the cities in San Francisco and Los Angeles. The remaining 20%, however, is allocated to commercial structures. This implies that you will never see the kind of massive residential buildings found in New York or Chicago and San Francisco or anywhere else in California. No, all you'll see here are reasonably modest single-family homes. For this reason, the Hollywood portrayal of California consists primarily of homes, suburbs, and automobiles. Additionally, you'll need a car to move around, unlike in other major cities across the world where living in buildings and taking public transportation is the norm. Just to give you an idea of the effects these land laws have had on the state of California, here you will see the population density of New York, which is over 28,000 people per mile, versus only 8,400 people in Los Angeles. And just to give you a reference, here you will see how New York compares to the most densely populated cities in the world. The most densely populated city in the world is the city of Manila in the Philippines, with 8 times more population per mile than New York. So California's laws are creating this housing shortage that is driving up prices. The families and companies who own those houses gain from this price hike, nevertheless. Consequently, these laws are in place. The wealthiest families in California have influenced legislation, arguing that cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco cannot become New York City due to buildings that ostensibly ruin the aesthetic appeal of the area. However, by enforcing these regulations, California is becoming the most costly state in the union and increasing the number of homeless individuals. In California, not everyone is wealthy despite all of this. While it is true that California has one of the highest concentrations of millionaires and billionaires per person in the nation, the enterprises owned by these millionaires and their families still need lower-class workers with the ability to operate buses, deliver packages, teach in schools, and do a variety of other jobs. These folks are being forced to live on the streets by the housing crisis. Numerous instances exist when people with low-paying occupations were compelled to live in their automobiles due to their inability to pay the exorbitant rentals in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Just regular individuals without the huge incomes and savings that Silicon Valley programmers enjoy. To give you an idea, an individual who earns less than $117,000 annually is regarded as low-income in San Francisco. These folks are able to sustain themselves on a month-to-month basis. And that's a significant concern because, as things stand, they are about to become homeless in the case of any unanticipated economic calamity. Many of those who live in their automobiles do so because they were forced to give up their dream of renting a home and living in their cars due to unfortunate events like illness or unpaid debt. On the other hand, there are many who become homeless due to their addictions and the knowledge that they would receive government assistance. Although California is the wealthiest state in the union, it also has the highest rate of homelessness. People who are under the influence of drugs live in squalor and commit crimes. Although California accounts for only 12% of the population of the entire United States, California has 1/3 of all homeless people. That's right, in this chart you'll see the number of people living on the streets by state. California has more than 170,000 people officially living on the streets. This is far more than the second most homeless state, New York, which has 74,000 people living on the streets. Furthermore, it's critical to remember that 170,000 of these individuals actually live in destitution. These are folks who have lost control over their life. We are not talking about people who live in their automobiles or briefly stay at a friend's house. Here's where the crucial query comes in: why are so many Californians living in filth and on the streets? Despite being the most costly state in the union, California also provides the most social benefits despite its exorbitant taxation. It wasn't always like this. In the past, California was a Republican and strongly capitalist state. These measures led to the establishment of the most significant corporations in the world as well as a massive migrant inflow. And the people of California had good intentions, what with all their wealth. They wished to assist others who were less fortunate than themselves, namely those who were homeless and in poverty. They provided food, social housing, and access to rehabilitation facilities as forms of support for these persons. Slowly but surely, the news got out, and every American who was homeless started to relocate to California. They were aware that they would have government assistance. The government was going to provide them with the well-known food stamps, which allowed them to shop at the grocery store, as well as general aid, which is a minimum wage, and lodging in motels. Yes, you listened correctly, the Californian government has reclaimed hotels and motels in order to provide housing for the state's homeless population. However, the situation is still out of control in spite of these actions. California is unable to sustain the large number of destitute and hopeless individuals who visit the streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles from all over the country. Thousands of individuals come to California every day to receive assistance from the state, but due to exorbitant rents, the government is no longer able to support any more people. This is especially true when it comes to providing them with housing. Because of this, the homeless are forced to live on the streets, where they are able to obtain food subsidies and a meager wage that they would not be able to obtain in any other state. Because of California's pleasant environment, they are left to live on the streets with no one to help them. However, the truth of the matter is that most homeless individuals are those who have become destitute due to drug dependence, which is a very common occurrence in these areas. These drugs are a genuine concern nowadays, and using them sends individuals to hell. As you can see from these pictures, there are people that transform from humans to zombies. These barbaric acts have exposed some of the worst human characteristics. And now for the major phenomenon. The wealthiest people on the earth live next to all of these homeless people. They oppose the construction of new buildings and houses because it doesn't fit their needs. However, the streets are cleaned in preparation for events such as Xi Jinping's arrival. They scrubbed every street while acting as though San Francisco is a pristine, secure, and respectable city. The democratic government has concealed the truth about one of its most famous cities from the head of the communist nation that is China, just as the Chinese pretend that all is okay with their products and the nation as a whole. And if you live in any of these cities, what is your opinion about this? Do you think it can improve in the future? Leave us your comments.